The first shots from the Ranger struck a Krell cruiser on its left flank. The weapons were called railguns according to Kelthra's database. They fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Simple technology, really. Primitive compared to plasma or particle weapons, but effective. Very effective. The tungsten rounds punched through the Krell shields like they were paper and tore into the hull beneath. The Krell fleet responded exactly as their doctrine predicted. They spread out wider, trying to create a killing box around the human ship. 3 vessels moved above the Ranger, 2 below and 2 on the sides. Standard encirclement tactics. Once in position, they would fire from all directions at once. No shield could protect against that much incoming fire. The human ship would be destroyed in seconds, but those seconds never came. Before the Krell could complete their formation, the Ranger did something insane. It accelerated even harder and flew directly between 2 of the cruisers, so close that Kelthra thought it might scrape their hulls. At that range, less than 200 meters, the Ranger fired everything it had: missiles, railgun rounds, even smaller point defense weapons normally used against incoming projectiles. All of it slammed into the 2 Krell cruisers at point-blank range. The Krell shields collapsed instantly. They were designed to stop weapons fired from kilometers away, not from touching distance. The armor beneath the shields melted and exploded. Both cruisers broke apart in massive fireballs that lit up Kelthra's displays. 2 ships destroyed in the first 90 seconds. Kelthra had never seen anything like it. The Krell had lost 30% of their force before they even understood what was happening. But that was not the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was what Kelthra heard when he tapped into the Ranger's communication channels. The humans were talking to each other, coordinating, functioning, but the tone of their voices was all wrong. They were excited. Happy even. 3 more to port, Captain. That was the weapons officer, a woman named Amy Brooks. Her voice was steady and focused, but underneath Kelthra detected something that made his skin crawl. Enthusiasm. Let them have it, Lieutenant, Captain Murphy replied, and there it was again. That edge in his voice, not fear. Not desperation, anticipation like he was enjoying this. The remaining 5 Krell ships tried to regroup. They fired their plasma cannons at the Ranger, sending superheated bolts of energy toward the human frigate. Some missed, some hit. Kelthra saw hull breaches open on the Ranger's side. Atmosphere vented into space in white clouds. Damage reports scrolled across his screen. 14 humans dead in the first 3 minutes. Any sane species would retreat now. They had lost people. Their ship was damaged. They had already accomplished more than anyone expected. Time to run, survive, claim a moral victory. The Ranger did not run. It turned toward the nearest Krell destroyer and accelerated again. Kelthra listened as the human engineering officer, a man named Carl Jensen, reported the damage to his captain. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7. Life support failing in sections B through F. 14 casualties. Shields at 40%. Can we still fight? Murphy asked. Yes, sir. Then we keep fighting. Reroute power from life support to weapons. Kelthra's translator must have malfunctioned. He played the message again. No, he heard correctly. The human captain had just ordered his engineer to sacrifice life support, the system that let them breathe to make their weapons stronger. Jensen did not question the order. Understood, Captain. We can breathe vacuum if it means killing these bugs. Breathe vacuum. That was a human expression for dying. Jensen was making a joke about dying, while in combat, while his ship was falling apart around him. Kelthra felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Ranger closed with the 3rd Krell ship. This destroyer was smarter than its companions. It tried to maintain distance, firing continuously while backing away. Good tactics. The human ship was damaged. Make it chase you, bleed it, let time do the work. But the Ranger was faster. Even damaged, even venting air and trailing debris, it was faster. It caught the destroyer and unleashed another barrage at close range. The Krell ship's engines exploded and it began to spin out of control. The Ranger fired again, putting rounds through the command section. The destroyer went dark and drifted away, lifeless. 3 down, 4 to go. The remaining Krell ships made their decision. They ran. Kelthra knew their doctrine well. When losses exceeded 50%, retreat and regroup. It was the smart move. The logical move. They had underestimated this opponent. Time to leave and report back to the hive. They turned and began accelerating toward the edge of the system where they could safely jump to faster than light speed. Kelthra relaxed slightly. The battle was over. The humans had won an impossible victory. Now they would repair their ship, mourn their dead, and celebrate surviving against terrible odds. This would make an interesting report. He began organizing his notes. Then Captain Murphy spoke again. Plot pursuit courses. We're not done. Kelthra froze. Pursuit courses? The Krell were fleeing. The colony was safe. The humans had won. What more did they want? Sir, another officer spoke up. This one sounded younger, less experienced. Sir, we have significant damage. Shields are failing. We have casualties that need medical attention. Should we not let them go? There was a pause. Kelthra leaned forward, waiting for Murphy's response. Surely the captain would see reason. Surely he would choose to save his remaining crew. They came here to kill us, Lieutenant, Murphy said quietly. They came to destroy our colony. To kill our people? No, we will not let them go. We will hunt down every single one of them. We will make sure they never attack another human world. Now plot those courses. Yes, sir. The Ranger, trailing fire and atmosphere, turned and chased the fleeing Krell ships. For 40 minutes, Kelthra watched as the human frigate pursued its enemies across the system. The Ranger was slower now, damaged and struggling, but it did not stop. It did not give up. One by one, it caught the Krell vessels. One by one, it destroyed them. The fourth ship died 12 minutes into the chase. The fifth lasted 20 minutes before its reactor exploded. The sixth and seventh tried to split up, running in different directions. The Ranger chose one, killed it, then turned and chased the other for another 15 minutes before finally catching and destroying it. When it was over, all 7 Krell ships were gone. Debris fields marked where they had died. The Ranger floated in space, barely functional. Kelthra's sensors showed 37 dead humans aboard. More than half the ship was open to vacuum. The reactor was overheating. The weapons were burned out. By all rights, the ship should not even be able to move anymore. But it was moving. Slowly, painfully, it turned and began the long journey back to New Houston. Kelthra sat in his observation ship, shaking. He had just watched something that should not exist. A species that did not fight to survive. They fought to win. They fought to kill. They accepted terrible losses, accepted death itself as long as they completed their objective. This was not normal. This was not how galactic warfare worked. Species were supposed to value survival above all else. That was the foundation of all military doctrine across the galaxy. Preserve your forces. Live to fight another day. Accept defeat when the cost becomes too high. Humans did not accept defeat. They did not calculate acceptable costs. They simply fought until they won or died. Kelthra played back the recordings, listening again to the human voices during the battle. That excitement, that eagerness. They were not afraid of dying. Some part of them actually wanted this, wanted the fight, wanted the violence. He thought about returning to the council immediately with his report. But something stopped him. He needed to know if this was unique to Captain Murphy and his crew. Maybe they were an exception. Maybe other humans were more reasonable, more rational, more like every other species in the galaxy. He decided to stay in human space and observe more battles. He needed to be sure. Looking back, Kelthra would realize that was his biggest mistake. Some knowledge once gained cannot be forgotten. Some truths are too terrible to bear. He should have left while he still could. Kelthra spent the next 2 months traveling through human territory, following their military ships and waiting for battles to occur. Each engagement he witnessed only deepened his growing horror. The pattern he had seen at New Houston was not unique. It was standard. It was how humans fought. The second battle took place near a colony called Frost Haven. Kelthra positioned himself near a major shipping route where human convoys carried supplies between worlds. Intelligence suggested that Dravian raiders might attack here. The Dravians were reptilian pirates who specialized in hit-and-run tactics. They would strike a convoy, steal what they could carry, and vanish before defenders arrived. Fast, efficient, and very rarely caught. A human destroyer named the TCS Defiant was patrolling the area. The captain was a woman named Lisa Grant. Kelthra studied her service record. She had commanded the Defiant for 3 years. Before that, she had served on 2 other ships. Her record showed 17 combat engagements with 0 losses. Either she was incredibly lucky or incredibly skilled. Probably both. The Dravian attack came without warning. 4 raider ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, right on top of a civilian transport carrying medical supplies. Medicine for a colony outbreak, according to the intercepted transmissions. Thousands of lives depended on that cargo reaching its destination. The Defiant was 30 minutes away at maximum speed. Too far. By the time Grant's ship arrived, the raiders would have taken what they wanted and disappeared. The transport's crew was already sending surrender signals. They were unarmed civilians. They had no choice. Kelthra expected Captain Grant to increase speed and hope to catch the raiders before they left. Maybe she would arrive in time to save some of the cargo. Maybe not. Either way, the civilians would survive, and that was what mattered. Cargo could be replaced. Lives could not. But Grant did not settle for maybe. She ordered her engineer, a man named Paul Martinez, to push the reactor beyond its safety limits. Far beyond? How far beyond? Martinez asked. Redline everything. I want maximum speed right now. There was a pause on the comm channel. Captain, if I do that, we might lose containment. The reactor could breach. We could all die. Then we die fast, Grant replied, her voice as calm as if she were ordering lunch. But those civilians will live. Push it, Kelthra listened in disbelief. Grant was willing to risk her entire ship and crew to save 1 transport of medicine. The math did not make sense. Her ship had 400 people aboard. The transport had 20. If the reactor breached, 400 would die to save 20. No species in the galaxy would make that trade. Martinez followed his orders. The Defiant's engines burned so hot that Kelthra could see the glow from his position, thousands of kilometers away. The ship's hull began to heat up from the strain. Metal was never supposed to get that hot while still holding atmosphere inside, but it worked. The Defiant covered 30 minutes of distance in 12. The destroyer arrived just as the Dravian raiders were attaching boarding tubes to the transport. Grant did not bother with warnings or demands for surrender. She opened fire immediately. Her weapons officer targeted the boarding tubes first, severing them and cutting off the raiders from their prey. Then the Defiant turned its full arsenal on the raider ships themselves. The Dravians tried to scatter, but they were too close to the transport. If they maneuvered aggressively, they would collide with the civilian ship. That moment of hesitation cost them. Grant showed no such hesitation. She fired through the gaps between the ships with precision that Kelthra found terrifying. 1 shot missed its target by less than 50 meters. If Grant's aim had been off by even a fraction, she would have hit the transport she came to save. But her aim was not off. Every shot found its mark. Within 7 minutes, all 4 Dravian raiders were burning hulks. The transport was safe. The medicine would reach its destination. Kelthra checked the Defiant's reactor status through his sensors. Critical. The containment was holding, but barely. Martinez was already working to bring the temperature down. They had been minutes, maybe seconds, away from a catastrophic breach. And then Kelthra heard something that made his blood run cold. The crew was singing. Someone had started a song and others joined in. Kelthra's translator struggled with the words. Something about wild blue yonder and nothing can stop the Space Force now. They were celebrating, singing, after nearly dying. While their reactor was still in the red zone, these humans were insane. The 3rd engagement happened in the Kepler asteroid belt. Pirates, not raiders this time, had established a base among the rocks. For months they had been attacking human mining operations. Small strikes. Annoying but not critical. Most species would have negotiated or simply avoided the area. Space was big. There were other places to mine. Humans did not avoid. They sent 3 small warships called corvettes to dig the pirates out. The lead ship was the TCS Storm, commanded by Captain Nicole Hayes. Kelthra followed them into the belt and watched as they navigated through the dense field of spinning rocks. The pirates had the advantage here. They knew the belt. They had defensive positions prepared. They could hide among the asteroids and strike from ambush. Basic defensive doctrine said that attacking such a position would require overwhelming force or a siege. The humans had 3 small ships against a fortified base. They should have called for reinforcements. They did not call for reinforcements. They went in. What followed was not really a battle. It was more like a 3-dimensional knife fight. The human ships moved through the asteroids at speeds that seemed suicidal. They dodged and weaved between rocks the size of mountains, using the terrain to their advantage. When pirates fired at them, the humans used asteroids for cover, then popped out and returned fire before vanishing again. Hayes's first officer, a man named Danny Cooper, coordinated the attack. Kepler listened to him direct the three ships like they were dancers in some violent ballet. Storm, take the high approach. Lightning, swing wide left. Thunder, straight up the middle. Make them choose. The pirates chose poorly. They focused on the thunder, the ship coming straight at them. While they were distracted, Storm and Lightning hit them from two different angles. The pirate base had shields, but the humans found the weak points where the shields had to open to let the pirates' own weapons fire out. They shot through those gaps with impossible accuracy. When conventional weapons proved insufficient against the fortified positions, Cooper made a decision that shocked Kepler. He ordered his crew to use mining charges. These were industrial explosives used to break apart asteroids for mining. They were not military weapons. They were tools, but humans could turn anything into a weapon. Cooper's crew loaded mining charges onto maintenance drones, programmed them to fly toward pirate positions, and detonated them on impact. Crude, inelegant, completely effective. If we can't shoot them out, we'll blow them out, Cooper said, as if this were the most obvious solution in the universe. The battle lasted 18 hours. 18 hours of continuous combat. Kepler watched human crews work without sleep, without breaks, without pause. They ate at their stations. They worked through exhaustion. 2 crew members on the Lightning were wounded by shrapnel when a pirate shot got through their shields. They were bandaged and sent back to work within an hour. When it was over, the pirate base was rubble and all the pirates were dead. The 3 human corvettes limped back to the nearest station for repairs. They had lost 32 people across the 3 ships, 32 dead to clear out some pirates. Kepler filed his reports after each battle. He sent them to the council with increasing urgency, but he stayed in human space, driven by a need to understand. Surely there was a limit to this behavior. Surely humans had some line they would not cross, some cost they would not pay. He needed to find that line. He needed to prove that humans were not the monsters his observations suggested they were. The 4th battle would show him the truth. There was no line. There was no cost too high, and humans were exactly the monsters he feared they might be, but by then it would be too late to look away. The station was called Liberty Point. It hung in deep space on the edge of human territory, a massive wheel of metal and glass that rotated slowly to create artificial gravity. 15,000 people lived there, workers, families, children. It served as a trading hub between humans and the Vortai Collective, a neighboring species that valued commerce and order above all else. Kepler arrived at Liberty Point following rumors of a territorial dispute. The Vortai were claiming that the station sat in their space, not human space. The boundary between the 2 territories had always been unclear in this region. Both sides had ignored the ambiguity for years because the trade benefited everyone. Now suddenly the Vortai wanted the station. 20 Vortai warships arrived without warning. They surrounded Liberty Point and broadcast a simple demand: surrender the station or be destroyed. They gave the humans 1 hour to decide. The station's security chief was a man named Eric Stone. Kepler accessed his service record. Stone was old for a human, nearly 60 years. He had served in their military for 4 decades before retiring to take this civilian position. He had seen combat, lots of combat. His record listed 43 engagements. Kepler expected Stone to evacuate. The station was civilian. It had no real weapons, just a few defensive turrets meant to stop pirates, not military warships. The Vortai had 20 fully armed vessels. This was not a battle. This was an execution waiting to happen. Any rational being would surrender or evacuate. Stone did neither. He ordered the civilian population into the station's reinforced central core. Then he armed every security officer, every dock worker, every volunteer who knew how to hold a weapon. He sent a message to the nearest human military base, but they were 6 hours away. Too far to help. The Vortai commander gave Stone one final chance. Surrender now. We have no wish to harm civilians. This station is ours by right. Leave peacefully and no one dies. Stone's response was broadcast on all frequencies, including the ones Kepler was monitoring. The old security chief stood in the station's command center, surrounded by displays showing 20 warships aimed at his home, and he said 5 words that made Kepler's scales tighten with dread. Come and take it. You bastards! Then Stone ordered his few defensive turrets to open fire on the Vortai flagship. The Vortai commander seemed as shocked as Kepler. There was a long pause before the enemy fleet responded. When they did, it was overwhelming. Plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Liberty Point's shields lasted 14 seconds before collapsing. Then the bombardment began in earnest. Kelthra watched sections of the station explode. Hull breaches killed hundreds instantly. Entire decks were exposed to vacuum. The death toll climbed with horrifying speed. 1,000 dead. 2,000. 3,000. And still the humans did not surrender. Stone organized the survivors with cold efficiency. He had prepared for this. Somehow he had known the Vortai might do this, and he had prepared. Volunteers in vacuum suits moved through the damaged sections, sealing what they could, rescuing who they could. But mostly they fought. A security officer named Karen Mills took control of the station's maintenance drones. These were small robots designed to repair hull damage and move cargo. Mills loaded them with explosives from the mining supply stockpiles. She programmed them to fly straight at the Vortai ships and detonate on impact. It was absurd. It was desperate. It was brilliant. 2 Vortai frigates took critical damage from improvised drone bombs and withdrew from the battle. The remaining ships adjusted their tactics, shooting down the drones before they could get close. But it bought time. Minutes. Precious minutes. In the engineering section, a technician named Greg Turner was working on something that made Kelthra feel sick. Turner had figured out that the station's main reactor could be overloaded to create a massive electromagnetic pulse. The pulse would destroy every electronic system within a huge radius, including the station itself. But it would also disable the Vortai fleet long enough for human reinforcements to arrive. The cost would be the station, and everyone still aboard. 6 hours was too long to evacuate 15,000 people. Maybe they could get a few thousand onto transport ships. The rest would have to stay, would have to die. Stone listened to Turner's proposal. Kelthra listened too, waiting for the security chief to reject this madness. No one would deliberately destroy their own home. No one would sacrifice thousands of lives for revenge. That was not how wars were fought. That was not how civilized species behaved. Stone asked one question. Will it work? Yes, sir. The Vortai ships will be dead in space. They will not be able to run or fight when our fleet arrives. How long do we have before the pulse? I need 30 minutes to set it up. Then I will need to trigger it manually from engineering. The automated systems would not allow this kind of overload. Stone nodded slowly. He looked at the casualty reports on his screens. 6,000 dead already, 9,000 still alive, trapped in the central core or scattered through the damaged sections. Many would not make it to the transports in time. Start the evacuation, Stone ordered. Get as many as you can onto anything that flies. You have 25 minutes. Turner understood what that meant. He would not be leaving. Someone had to stay behind to trigger the pulse. Someone had to make sure the sequence completed. Yes, sir. Stone made his announcement to the station. This is Chief Stone. We are evacuating immediately. Get to the transport bay now. We have 25 minutes. If you can hear this, move now. Run. Save yourselves. This station is about to become a weapon. Kelthra watched the chaos that followed. Humans running through damaged corridors. Parents carrying children. The injured being dragged by the healthy. And through it all, Stone's security team maintained order. They directed traffic. They helped the slow. They stayed calm, even as the station continued to shake from Vortai weapons fire. The transports launched with whoever had made it aboard. 3,000 people, maybe 4,000. No time to count, no time to wait. The small ships boosted away from Liberty Point at maximum acceleration, escaping the blast radius. Turner worked in engineering, his hands steady as he bypassed safety system after safety system. Kelthra could see him through the station's internal cameras. The technician was humming something, a song. Kelthra's translator caught a few words. Something about stars and stripes and bravery. Stone remained in the command center. He could have left. There were still a few small ships in the dock. But he stayed, coordinating the defense until the very end. He fired the remaining defensive turrets. He launched the last few explosive drones. He fought with everything he had left. Turner, are we ready? Stone asked over the comm. Ready, Chief. Trigger on your mark. Stone looked at his screens one last time. At the casualty reports. At the damage assessments. At the tactical display showing 20 Vortai ships still surrounding his station. His home, his responsibility, do it. Turner pressed the final sequence of buttons. The reactor began to overload. Kelthra's sensors screamed warnings. He boosted his ship away, increasing the distance as fast as he could. The energy readings coming from Liberty Point were off the scale. The station exploded in a pulse of electromagnetic radiation that washed across space like an invisible wave. Every Vortex ship went dark instantly. Their shields collapsed. Their engines died. Their weapons powered down. They floated helpless in the void, blind and deaf. 30 minutes later, the human fleet arrived. 40 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel with weapons already hot. They saw the disabled Vortex vessels. They saw the burning wreckage that had been Liberty Point. They received the automated distress beacon that Stone had programmed to explain what happened. The Vortex ships tried to surrender. Their commanders used emergency backup communications to broadcast surrender signals on all frequencies. They had been beaten. They accepted defeat. They wanted to live. The human fleet did not accept their surrender. Admiral Frank Sullivan, the fleet commander, gave a simple order. Light them up, all 40 human warships open fire. The disabled Vortex vessels could not defend themselves, could not maneuver, could not fight back. They died one after another, methodically executed. When questioned by the Galactic Council later about this violation of surrender protocols, Sullivan's response was recorded and distributed across the galaxy. They killed 6,000 of our people. They attacked a civilian station. They murdered children. They don't get to go home. Kepler remained in his observation ship for 3 days after the battle. He did not eat. He barely slept. He replayed the recordings over and over. He watched Stone give his final order. He watched Turner trigger the pulse that killed him. He watched thousands of humans die because they refused to surrender their home. And then he watched 40 human warships commit what every other species would call a war crime, the execution of defeated enemies. And he watched those same humans feel no guilt, no remorse, no regret. This was what humans were. This was what they would do. Not because they were desperate, not because they had no choice, but because they chose violence. They chose death. They chose to win at any cost. Kepler finally understood. The pattern was complete, and he wished with every part of his being that he had never taken this assignment. Some truths were too terrible to know. Kepler stood in the great hall of the Galactic Council, waiting for his new assignment. He had been doing this job for 30 years now. His task was simple: watch different species fight their wars and write reports about what he saw. He was good at his job, very good. He had documented over 300 battles across the galaxy, studying how different aliens fought and died. Today felt like any other day. The council leader, a tall being made of crystal and light, handed him a data pad. Kepler looked at the screen and read the mission details. He would be observing humans, a newly discovered species from a small blue planet they called Earth. They had just joined the council after inventing ships that could travel faster than light. The humans had recently fought off some Krell, raiders near their home system. The Krell were bug-like creatures that attacked in swarms. They were annoying but not particularly dangerous. Most species could handle them without much trouble. The council wanted to know how humans fought, what weapons they used, and how they organized their military forces. Standard stuff. Kepler felt no excitement or worry. He had seen it all before. New species always fought the same way at first. They panicked, called for help, and either ran away or died trying to defend themselves. After a few battles, they learned the rules of galactic warfare. Minimize losses. Preserve resources. Fight only when necessary. Survive to fight another day. He packed his equipment and boarded his ship, the Twilight Watcher. It was a beautiful vessel, designed for one purpose, staying hidden while recording everything. The ship had cloaking technology that made it invisible to sensors and eyes. He could park right next to a battle and no one would know he was there. Perfect for his work. The journey to human space took 6 days. Kepler spent the time reviewing what little information the council had about humans. They were mammals like many species in the galaxy. They lived short lives, maybe 80 or 90 of their years. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and walked upright. Nothing special. Their technology was primitive compared to most council races, but adequate for basic space travel and warfare. What interested Kepler was their history. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. War after war after war on their home planet. They had divided themselves into groups called nations and fought over everything: land, resources, beliefs, pride. The list went on forever. They had even invented weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. Kepler found that curious but not alarming. Many young species went through a violent phase before maturing. His destination was a human colony called New Houston. Intelligence reports suggested the Krell would attack there soon. The colony was small, only 40,000 humans living on a rocky planet rich in useful metals. They had some defensive satellites in orbit and one military ship docked at their station. Just one ship. The TCS Ranger, they called it. A frigate with 200 crew members. Kepler arrived 3 days before the Krell showed up. He positioned his ship in a stable orbit where he could see everything. Below him, the colony continued its daily routine. Miners went to work. Children went to school. People lived their lives, unaware of the danger coming toward them. He spent those 3 days watching the Ranger. The ship looked sturdy but unremarkable. Standard weapons, standard shields, standard everything. The captain was a man named Jake Murphy. Kepler observed him through the ship's external cameras. Murphy seemed calm and professional. He ran drills with his crew. They practiced shooting at targets and responding to emergencies. Normal military behavior. On the 3rd day, alarms rang throughout the colony. The Krell had arrived. 7 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Kepler checked their configuration. 3 cruisers, 4 destroyers. Together, they had 10 times the firepower of the lone human frigate. This would be over quickly. Kepler activated all his recording equipment. This was the moment he had come to document. He expected to see the standard response. The Ranger would send distress signals to other human forces. The colony would begin evacuating civilians. The frigate would position itself defensively and try to buy time for people to escape. Maybe they would damage 1 or 2 Krell ships before being destroyed. Tragic but predictable. The Krell fleet moved toward the planet in their usual formation, a spreading pattern designed to surround and overwhelm. Kepler had seen it 100 times. He began dictating his observations into his recorder, describing the Krell approach and noting the estimated time until they reached firing range. Then something unexpected happened. The Ranger did not move into a defensive position. Instead, the human frigate's engines flared bright blue and the ship accelerated. Hard. Directly toward the Krell fleet. Kepler stopped talking. He watched his instruments, thinking there must be some mistake. Perhaps the Ranger was repositioning to a better defensive location. But no. The ship was charging straight at 7 enemy vessels alone at attack speed. He heard the transmission from the Ranger to the colony surface. Captain Murphy's voice came through clear and steady. "Get to the shelters. We'll handle this. Handle this?" Kepler felt confusion wash over him. Handle what? A suicidal charge? The human captain must be panicking, making an emotional decision. Young species often did that. They let fear override logic. But Murphy's voice did not sound afraid. He sounded calm, determined, almost eager. The Ranger closed the distance with frightening speed. Kepler checked his calculations 3 times. The human ship was not slowing down. It was going to fly directly into the middle of the Krell formation. This made no sense. Every tactical manual in the galaxy said the same thing. Never let yourself get surrounded. Keep your distance. Use your maneuverability. Survive. The humans were doing the opposite of everything Kepler had learned in 30 years of watching warfare. His scales tingled with a feeling he rarely experienced. Dread. Something was wrong here. Something he did not understand. The Ranger reached weapons range and opened fire. Bright streaks of light shot from the human ship toward the Krell cruisers. The enemy vessels scattered as expected, trying to surround the lone attacker. But the Ranger did not turn away. It plunged deeper into the enemy formation like a knife sliding into flesh. Kepler leaned closer to his displays, his heart's beating faster. This was not standard behavior. This was not panic. This was something else entirely. Something that made his instincts scream danger even though he was safely hidden far from the battle. He had come to watch humans fight. Now, as the first explosions lit up the darkness of space, he was beginning to realize he had no idea what he was actually about to witness. The battle had only just begun, and already everything Kepler thought he knew about warfare was starting to crumble. Kepler stood before the High Assembly once more. The great chamber was filled with representatives from 200 species, all of them waiting to hear his report. He had been gone for 5 months. He had observed humans in 4 major engagements and dozens of smaller skirmishes. His data was complete. His recordings were clear. He had done his job. Now he had to tell them what he had learned. And he dreaded it. The assembly leader called the session to order. The chamber fell silent. Thousands of eyes from hundreds of different species focused on Kepler. He activated his display and began. Honored members of the assembly, I have completed my assessment of human military doctrine. He paused, gathering his courage. My findings are troubling. The first video appeared on the massive display screens throughout the chamber. The Battle of New Houston. The assembly watched as the Ranger charged into the Krell formation. They saw the suicidal tactics. They heard the human voices, calm and eager as they flew into certain death. They watched the Ranger hunt down fleeing enemies instead of accepting victory. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Kepler let them watch without commentary. The video spoke for itself. Next came Frost Haven. The assembly saw Captain Grant risk her entire ship to save one transport. They saw the Defiant's hull glowing from heat stress. They heard the crew singing after nearly dying. Then the Kepler belt engagement. The improvised weapons. The refusal to call for reinforcements. The 18 hours of continuous combat. Finally, Liberty Point. The chamber went completely silent as they watched the station die. They heard Stone's final order. They saw Turner trigger the pulse that killed him and thousands of others. They watched the human fleet execute the surrendered Vortai ships. When the videos ended, the silence stretched for a full minute. Kepler waited. Someone had to speak first, and it would not be him. A council member from the Threen Collective finally broke the quiet. This behavior seems desperate. Surely these humans were acting out of necessity. Species often make extreme choices when threatened. Kepler shook his head. No, honored member. This is not desperation. This is standard operating procedure for humanity. I reviewed their military history going back thousands of years. They have always fought this way. Not because they must, but because this is how they think warfare should be conducted. He pulled up historical records from Earth. Ancient battles where humans fought to the last soldier. Medieval sieges where cities chose starvation over surrender. Modern wars where entire nations mobilized every resource for total victory. Nuclear weapons developed and deployed despite knowing they could end all life on the planet. Humans have been fighting each other since before they discovered fire, Kepler continued. They have fought over land, resources, beliefs, pride, revenge, and countless other reasons. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own world. Not once, but dozens of times. And they came within moments of using them, multiple times. Another council member spoke up, this one from the peaceful Lumari species. Then why did we accept them into the council? They sound dangerous. They sound like a threat to galactic peace. Kepler displayed new information. Fleet deployment records from the human military. Ship counts. Production capabilities. Response times. The Vortai had 20 warships at Liberty Point, Kepler said quietly. 40 human ships arrived in response. I checked their records. That response force represented less than 5% of their total military capability. And they mobilized it in under 2 hours. The chamber erupted. Council members talked over each other, their voices rising in alarm. 5%. 2 hours. The implications were staggering. Kepler raised his voice to be heard. Humans maintain a standing military force larger than most species even know exists. They have shipyards on dozens of worlds. They produce weapons and ships continuously, even during peacetime. They train every generation in combat skills. They have contingency plans for wars against enemies they have not even met yet. He let that sink in before continuing. And they have a concept that does not exist in any other known species. They call it hatred. We all know aggression, a council member objected. Territorial instincts, defensive violence, resource competition. These are universal. No, Kepler said firmly. Not like this. Humans can hate, not simple anger or fear. True, sustained, multi-generational hatred. They can remember wrongs for decades, centuries even. They teach their children to remember. They build monuments to their anger. And when they hate something, they do not stop until it is destroyed. Not defeated. Destroyed. He played the recording of Admiral Sullivan's words after Liberty Point. They killed 6,000 of our people. They don't get to go home. That was a war crime, someone protested. Executing surrendered enemies violates council law. The humans did not care, Kepler replied. They accepted the consequences. They knew there would be diplomatic fallout. They did it anyway because to them, justice mattered more than law. Revenge mattered more than treaty obligations. Making an example mattered more than galactic opinion. He displayed his final analysis. Combat effectiveness ratings, victory percentages, average casualty rates, all the cold numbers that described human warfare. Humans do not fight to survive, Kepler said. They fight to win. Those are not the same thing. Survival means accepting defeat when the cost is too high. Winning means paying any cost. Humans will sacrifice their ships. They will sacrifice their people. They will sacrifice entire worlds if necessary. As long as they achieve victory, the cost is acceptable. A council member from the militaristic Korath species spoke. Surely they have limits. Every species has a breaking point. Kepler thought about Stone standing in the command center as his station died around him. About Turner humming as he triggered his own death. About Captain Murphy chasing down fleeing enemies with his ship falling apart. About Grant pushing her reactor to the edge of meltdown to save 20 strangers. If they have a breaking point, Kepler said slowly. I did not find it. Every human I observed was willing to die for their objective. Not because they wanted to, but because they accepted it as the natural price of success. They do not value their individual lives above their goals. They value the mission, the objective, the principle they are fighting for. He closed his displays and faced the assembly directly. I was sent to assess human military capability. What I learned is this. Humans are not good at war despite their nature. They are good at war because of their nature. For 10,000 years they have been fighting each other. 10,000 years of practicing violence, learning tactics, developing weapons, perfecting the art of killing. Kepler's voice grew quiet, but in the silent chamber everyone heard him clearly. Every other species in this galaxy went to space to explore, to trade, to expand. Humans went to space because they finally ran out of room to fight each other on their home planet, and now they have brought their violence to the rest of us. The assembly sat in stunned silence. Kepler pulled up his final recommendation. My advice is simple. Never go to war with humanity. Not because they are stronger, though they are. Not because they have more ships, though they do. But because they will not stop. They will not tire. They will not forgive. They will fight for years, decades, generations if necessary. They will accept losses that would break any other species. They will sacrifice anything and everything to achieve victory. He thought about the singing crew of the Defiant, the laughing officers on the Ranger, the determined faces on the corvettes in the Kepler belt, the old security chief who chose death over surrender. The Krell learned this when they attacked New Houston. The Dravians learned this at Frost Haven. The pirates learned this in the Kepler belt. The Vortai learned this at Liberty Point. Kepler looked around the chamber at the fearful faces of 200 species. I strongly suggest we do not learn this lesson ourselves. He delivered his final statement. I was sent to watch humans in battle. I completed my assignment, and I wish with everything I am that I had never seen what they are capable of, because now I know the truth. I know what monsters look like when they smile and say, let's get to work. I know what nightmares sound like when they sing while flying into plasma fire. I know what the future holds if we ever make enemies of these creatures. Kepler powered down his display. They are not our enemies today. We should all pray they never become our enemies tomorrow. The vote was called immediately. The Assembly approved humanity's full council membership with no restrictions on military expansion. The vote was unanimous. Every species agreed. Some threats were too dangerous to provoke. Some monsters were better kept as allies. Kepler submitted his retirement papers the next day. After 30 years of observing warfare across the galaxy, he was done. He had seen enough. Too much. The dreams came every night now. Humans singing in dying ships. Stone's final order. Turner's humming. Murphy's eager voice as he ordered his frigate to chase down fleeing enemies. He would never watch another battle. He would never willingly see combat again. Some species should never have been tested. Some capabilities should never have been documented. But it was too late now. The galaxy knew what humans were. What they could do. What they would do if pushed.